the start of 2015, the City of Cape Town and the Minstrels Association have been at loggerheads, seemingly. Began with the annual Minstrel Parade that had to be postponed due to a number of reasons. Tweede Nuwe Jaar was this year only celebrated on the 17th of January. Now the standoff between the two groups has reached fever pitch again, when the city this weekend accused the minstrels of breaching an interdict that prohibits big troupes from doing their traditional laps of honour in the Bo-Kaap, saying they've received complaints of noise and safety concerns. The ANC in the Western Cape has also weighed in on the matter, questioning the city's true motives. Well, we are joined today by the Western Cape ANC leader, Mr. Marius Fransman, as well as the City of Cape Town's mayoral member for tourism and events, Garreth Bloor. Very good morning to you, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Mr. Bloor, if I can start with you, can you just go back to the weekend's proceedings and clarify to us why the city applied for an interdict to stop a traditional parade that's always happened in the first place?
Well, the city has certainly supported all traditional parades, and what we require are effective planning mechanisms for when we have these parades. So that requires an events application, which we're always very keen to receive, so we can provide the logistical accommodation, toilets that are required and other related logistics to make an event a success. And what we have to do is, of course, understand that there's been several complaints received from residents of the Bo-Kaap, a very historic community that themselves have been a part of the minstrel heritage. And so I think the key here is to balance the rights of all parties and to actively promote the minstrels as we do, but ensure that we can do that effectively so we have the right infrastructure in place to support events. So really the interdict was not about marches, but illegal marches, and we remain committed to getting marches on the go and supporting this as we've done. The minstrels are the single biggest beneficiary of the events budget if you look at events we support, and there are over 1,500 across the city annually. So we're committed to that, but of course it's got to be done in a way that promotes minstrels to the best effect possible, and that means working within the structures that exist so we can maximize the success year in and year out.
Mr. Fransman, you've openly questioned this interdict. Can I ask you for a response to what Mr. Bloor just told us?
Well, what we've just heard from Mr. Bloor is absolute a lie. The reality is that there was complaints of some white landowners and property owners in that area. What we've seen since Wednesday last week, the total clamp down from JP Smith, a councillor in the area responsible for safety and security, that decided that he's going to use the force in the system of the security of the city to try and create havoc amongst the minstrels. This thing is coming for more than 100 years. Suddenly, I hear Mr. Bloor talks about illegal march in the Bo-Kaap. The reality is noise pollution, but when these property owners that got nightclubs in Long Street, in Wells Street, in Strand Street, because they're white, they do those things, then it's a non-issue. The reality here is Mr. Bloor and the City of Cape Town has stopped the Tweede Nuwe Jaar from happening. They basically made sure that there's a clampdown. They've now tried to suffocate the culture of the minstrels and our heritage. What we've seen, even under Helen Zille's reign when she was the City of Cape Town mayor, she in fact tried to stop entry, unless Mr. Bloor say it's not true. She tried to stop entry to the Bo-Kaap march from Wells Street to town. So what we've seen is the last few years onslaught onto it. What we are calling on the City of Cape Town to do is to accept that the culture of the coloured community is also the culture of South Africa. That the fact that there was more than 100 years of slavery don't make our people to feel like slaves still. And that is the fundamental contradiction that we've got here.
That deals with the interdict and the marching into the city. I want to go back to Mr. Bloor quickly and talk about the other issue that surfaced. The city's also asked now for an investigation by the public protector, mind you, and we don't even know if the public protector has jurisdiction in this matter, into the finances of the minstrels. Can you tell us why now you need an investigation into the minstrels' finances?
Well, part of any agreement, it's a case of the minstrel leadership providing details to demonstrate the support that was allocated indeed has gone to the beneficiaries, which are the minstrel group themselves. And that is simply a requirement of any good governance, is to ensure public funds are applied and spent on their stated objective. And of course, when we considered the minstrel application, we were told, and we allocated an amount of 6 million with the province, that this was the only source of funding. And should we not come to the table, and we have every year, and we would always, but should we have not done so, this event would have fallen flat. And of course, subsequently, a minstrel group did apply to the lottery for funding, and it was demonstrated that tens of millions had already been allocated. The question is, what has happened to the money? And we simply want to ensure that money that is allocated and must be allocated is spent on its stated objective, which is the promotion of an event that is a critical part of the identity of Cape Town, and certainly so many of the peoples of Cape Town. It's celebrated, and we need to continue to have it as an iconic event, not only for South Africans, but for people across the continent. And certainly this issue of complaints coming only from one group is completely incorrect. If you look at the record of complaints coming from within the Bo-Kaap, it's certainly from ratepayers associations, ordinary residents, people who enjoy the minstrels, but who object to an uncoordinated way in which these activities take place, which don't lend itself to the promotion of this event annually and the promotion of the culture and the heritage that's associated with the minstrels. So I certainly don't think it's in any way racist to ensure that money that's applied for and is allocated is then accounted for, so we have a justified basis to continue our support and to keep on promoting one of the best events that is on the calendar in South Africa, and also an event that we continue to allocate more funds to than any other event. And as I say, we've got hundreds and leading into thousands per year. We're proud of our support, but we've got to make sure that the money goes to those minstrel associations and groups on the ground, and that's the key. And it's part of the agreement that the money be accounted for. It's part of the law of South Africa that you've got accountability. That's the basis for good governance, spending public funds and making sure it gets to the people.
If I can go across to Mr. Fransman. Mr. Fransman, I'd like your response to that within the context of the city giving money at the beginning of this year to the minstrels. Now they want this to be investigated. How do you view this and your response?
It's important that good governance, accountability, and checks and balances, we must understand actually it was brought in by the ANC government. That is the bottom line. Prior to 94, you had a smoke screen of governance, but actually people were ripping this country apart by the apartheid state. What we are having now is the hard reality even that beginning of this year, the city decides to give funding, little as it was, to the minstrels, but guess what? Whilst they are giving the funding, they immediately ask for accountability, and they immediately ask for the books. Whilst the contract with the minstrels talks about March, they must give responses in March. So what we've seen here, we've seen a heavy-handed approach by the city of Cape Town, in fact, by the mayor, that goes havoc against the minstrels. Why? Because the minstrels decided to walk on the 10th of January. Whilst they were instructed by the city of Cape Town to walk on another day, they decided to go to the ANC celebrations. That's the fundamental contradiction here. We are saying to the DA that it is wrong to use state power to create a serious siege on them. The minstrels will account, and they must account. That's a separate issue. The ANC is not the minstrels. What we are also saying, the public protector should not be used in this political fight that the city of Cape Town has with the minstrels, because the public protector must rather investigate and come forward with a report of 400 million rand stolen from the state coffers by the likes of companies like Volcon, which the city of Cape Town and Mr. Bloor must answer. In Manenberg, in the Nova Park, and in Atlanta schools, and the flats that are not built, money went from the city of Cape Town coffers, money went from the provincial government, more than 300 to 400 million rand. Why are they not asking for accountability? Is it because Volcon is essentially funding the Democratic Alliance? That's the contradiction that we've got here. Here's a small group of people, Cape Flats communities, essentially have created genocide under apartheid. Now they must again feel victimized. It's wrong, Mr. Bloor. What we actually expect you to is to investigate Volcon. Please tell the community of Manenberg why those flats are not completed. Please tell the community of Atlantis why the schools is not completed. Please tell us, is the DA being funded by Fulcon?
First of all, if I can come in on that.
Yes.
Great. I mean, the issue here, we have a blurring of issues. This government has a record of complete accountability, clean audits year in, year out, exemplary. Even the president's own reports indicate service delivery at the highest level and top outcomes within the city of Cape Town and within the Western Cape broadly. So the issue around expenditure on certain projects are investigated as required and put across whenever. This 400 million issue is completely unrelated to the Minstrels, and we'll happily investigate that.
No, why don't you investigate? Why don't you now immediately
continues with
no, why don't you agree? Wait, why don't you agree, Mr. Bloor, to actually now tomorrow open a case at the public protector?
We are more than happy to look into absolutely any issue, and you're welcome to go to the public protector too.
Will you ask
the fact is that this case, we're happy to look into that issue.
Are you saying,
and any other issue?
Are you
this prepared is the first that I hear for you raising this.
400 million rand between the city and province. Are you prepared that that must go to the public protector for investigation?
The city is very happy for the public protector
to investigate. So will you now go and lay a charge around that?
We're absolutely happy. And we've, on any complaint received from companies, especially on the stadiums, it's the city of Cape Town that was the first in the country to instigate proceedings to look into the cronyism that happens when it comes to construction of major projects across the country.
And who was responsible for that
instigated that.
In this case, the mayor,
that across the country, which was then subsequently followed up on. So let's get back to the Minstrels issue, because the facts speak for themselves as far as the city of Cape Town goes.
Am I right that in the
contract, city of Cape Town, Minstrels issue relates to audited financial statements for the Minstrels, as for any other organisation for which a contract is issued. And the public protector is welcome to investigate that.
Is it true that in the city of Cape Town, Mr. Bloor, that there's a contract that the Minstrels must account in March? Is that true or not?
It is true that there's a contract that exists for which the Minstrels need to account, but the city has to respond by the date at which people are supposed to receive their funding. There's a date for an overall final report, a final report that is exercised. What we need to do is deal with service providers who've approached the mayor now, saying they have not received fund payment yet for services rendered. And the critical issue with that is that people are still waiting on their accounts. So what we're asking for here in the case of the Minstrels is simply that we receive, as per the contract, within our request, an account for the funds spent based on complaints, which is in the contract. If complaints are received, we can request information relating to payment of service providers. It's in the contract. That's what we've done. And the second issue is to request the lottery funding issue be looked at, given that it's come to our attention, tens of millions of rands of lottery funding have also gone into this event. Why has that not been accounted for? Why have the communities not seen the benefit? Lottery funding is funding allocated to support an event that was not public, was not visible. The Minstrels themselves discovered this was an issue and have come to the city, and we're simply calling for an investigation. If there's any other matter that wishes to be brought forward, let the public protector investigate it. We open ourselves daily to requests for investigation. Every single time we see it and say, absolutely, we're open, our books are open. What happens? Year in, year out, it comes out clean. The city of Cape Town is the only government that is consistently clean with audits where money is spent on what we say it's spent on, and not stolen from the poor. Because
thank you, Mr. Bloor.
And that's what we're looking for.
Mr. Bloor, I thank you for wrapping it up there for us. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. Very lively debate this morning. Thank you for joining us. We will continue this discussion around the audit and the Minstrels. Hopefully, when the report comes out, we'll have the Minstrel Association in here later in the week to try and represent their side of the story. But I thank both of you gentlemen for joining us. That's the ANC Provincial Leader, Western Cape, Mr. Marius Fransman, and then the City of Cape Town's mayoral member for tourism and events, Mr. Garreth Bloor. I thank you, gentlemen, for joining us this morning. Now, there you have it. Lively this morning. Let's say